Hello, it's Lord Slaw here, and today I'm coming at you with a video on Cybermen designs, which is similar to my Dalek designs video I did about 6 months ago, because a lot of people put some positive feedback on that video, and somebody recently put in the comments saying, why don't you do a video like this on Cybermen designs? And I thought, well, why not? It's a easy enough video to do, and plenty of interesting discussion to be had. And yeah, it's a lot less heavy than some of my more recent videos, as I have been getting quite analytical, but perhaps overly analytical, some might say, but oh well. So the Cybermen, out of all of the Doctor Who mainstays and staples, not just villains, but just like recurring objects even, have probably undergone the most redesigns, like probably even more than the TARDIS, although I'm not quite sure about that. Although they were pretty similar throughout Classic Who, the TARDISes, but I digress. They've gone through so many redesigns, and there's lots of interesting things about most of the Cybermen, and I think there's a lot to say, so it's ripe for discussion. So let's start with the 10th planet Cybermen. Probably one of the most famous Cybermen designs, it was the first, and I think it most fulfills the original purpose of the Cybermen, which isn't just, you know, another monster of the week, a robot army, blah blah blah, which is what the Cybermen kind of became. We'll get onto that later. This is a person, like it was a person, but slowly, because of fear of their own death, they've replaced their organs and bits and bobs with technology until they become less than human and more machine. And that's far more interesting than just a hive mind robot army, because they're a dime a dozen. What makes them so interesting is the fact that they are just a twisted parody of us. They're not automatons in the 10th planet. They very much are all individuals, just with all of their bits and bobs replaced, so they're more like machines. And that's much more interesting, and it leads to a much more interesting story. But in terms of the design, the reason it manages to fulfill that is just of how shambolic it all looks, and how you can kind of see the bits of humanity still kind of tacked onto it. Like, they've got the human hands. Originally they were meant to have gloves, actually, and they just paint themselves. But obviously can't tell that in the black and white. But I think it was actually good that that kind of mistake happened, because having the hands there, it just kind of reminds you, God, these are humans. And another bit about how shambolic they are is how, like, they've got these massively bulky chest units, because in the future Simon will have much more downsized chest units. So part of that was because it was an absolute nightmare for the people wearing the costumes. Like, bits would fall off all the time. It was apparently it was pretty horrible to work on, but it looks really good, because, yeah, at the end of the day, the point of them is just to show how horrible this existence would have been, where you've got to walk around, like, out of desperation to survive. These people have botched themselves, removed all of their humanity, and now have to lug around a bloody boiler on their chests all day just to keep going. And it makes you question, like, is this worth it? And the answer is, if you've got any sense, probably not. And it's a warning, because obviously this is the kind of thing that we'll definitely be seeing very soon, like the kind of technology where you can, you know, sustain humans for longer. So the message to the Cybermen is increasingly more relevant, and I think this design really captures that more than any other. And it's an important message, and it's a shame that it's one that's been lost over the years, and they've more or less just became Monster of the Week. But the occasional good story, like one of the recent Capaldi ones, wasn't that bad, but we'll get onto that in a bit. So after that, they redesigned them for the moon base and the Tomb of the Cybermen, because they were an absolute nightmare to work on. And yeah, I like this design. It certainly looks a lot more fierce than the 10th planet design. Like the 10th planet ones, kind of, it's the horror more comes from you kind of seeing, you know, ourselves in them, whereas this one, the horror comes from just, Christ, they look bloody terrifying. It's good in that respect. I just like the absolutely soulless eyes, which, you know, I don't know what's more scary, that or when, if you actually look in the 10th planet Cybermen's dark eyes, you can actually see a little beady human eye, which, I don't know what's more scary, but they do look pretty fierce. And the chest unit's been much more downsized, although I do like that moment when Toberman rips off the chest unit and the cyber pus comes out. That actually does still capture kind of the original point of the Cybermen, but I do feel a little bit is lost here. And it does get worse later on, but it's just the fact that they look more alien. They look a lot further from us than the original Cybermen, because they've got 3 fingers now, everything's slimmed down and slimlined. You know, it no longer has the same kind of horrific effect, in my opinion. They still look scary, it's still a bloody good design, and it's very iconic, and it works, you know, as a kind of Monster of the Week kind of thing, because, you know, Moonbase and Tomb of the Cybermen are excellent episodes, and some of the writing, in especially the Moonbase, does actually still help get the message across, but I do feel the design on the whole is weaker, at least from a kind of more analytical, like, you know, analysing the original message of the Simon kind of perspective. But as a design for a sci-fi show, yeah, it's pretty damn good. It looks good. So the next one is The Wheel in Space. Now, The Wheel in Space is a bit of an odd one, because I might be wrong on this, but I think there was only 3 Cybermen suits used in the whole thing, and for the most of it, it's just 2 of them. And the third one is only seen in the last bit of episode 6 when they're doing the spacewalk over to the wheel, and that was made out of like stock bits and bobs. So there's technically 2 Cybermen designs in this episode, but I'm going to go for the one which is the main one. It looks alright. I quite like the way they've like, because they've got wetsuits and spray painting them silver, so it's now it's less baggy. It's very slimline, so it looks a bit more metallic. Although that was never the intention of the first 2 Cybermen designs, but well, whatever. It looks alright. This one's edging even further into the kind of territory of making them look a bit more like robots, and yeah, and the writing was definitely no longer there in terms of you know, the point of the Cybermen. But they still look good. This is the first one to have the eye drops, which are a bit of an odd one. On the one hand, I do kind of like them as it's a on-screen kind of visual metaphor, as it were, for the condition these creatures are in. Because they've removed all their emotion just because it's so unbearable, at least according to some Cybermen lore, and that's the reason why they don't have emotions. So that's kind of interesting. Although what I'm not a fan of is, am I making this up? I'm pretty sure they have a little drop out of their mouth, which is like, okay, so they're hungry as well, eh? Yeah, that I've always found that one a bit odd. I might just be completely making that up, because I'm not actually looking at the pictures in front of me right now. I'm just picturing them in my head from my encyclopedic like knowledge of Doctor Who. But oh well. You'll see on screen, so if I'm talking bollocks, you can tell me off in the comments. And the next one is The Invasion, and they go for a similar but updated design of the Wheel in Space ones. And I have to say, these ones look a lot better. Maybe, like those, they don't get the original message of the Cybermen, and I'm going to stop bringing that up until it's relevant, until there's one that actually does from now on. But these look much better than that. They look a little less kind of cobbled together. They look much more original, much more streamlined, and they're very iconic. When you think of the Cybermen, at least when you think of classic Cybermen, this is the design you think of. This is the design like they put on the front of Big Finish most of the time. And I think just from that standpoint, you've got to admire it, because it's probably the most iconic Cybermen design, at least throughout the whole of it. I mean, these days, people will probably say the Cybers ones were the most iconic, but I think just for how long this design was seen as, right, this is the Cybermen when you see them. I think it's got to be appreciated for that. And I do like the kind of weird updated Trest unit with the flashing lights and the little gun in the middle. Although it is kind of edging more towards kind of, you know, mindless cyborg army kind of stuff. But still, it looks good, and it works, especially for the Invasion. And then we move on to Revenge of the Cybermen, because there wasn't another Cybermen story for quite a long time after the Invasion. And Revenge of the Cybermen, yeah, they're similar to the Invasion ones, except for now they've got flares for trousers. Well, Cybermen, trousers probably a bad description, but either way, it looks like they have flares, which is very 70s, and also they have less nice-looking handlebars, where they now look like, you know, the kind of tubes you'd have on a Hoover rather than metal implements, and also they have little guns on their head. Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of this design. It looks very 70s, which I suppose it does have a bit of charm from that perspective. And the guns in the head, they're alright. But it's just kind of a step down from the Invasion, which is quite odd, because I'm fairly sure that they would have had more budget in the Philip Hinchcliffe era, but I might be wrong there. But either way, it's an okay design. It's kind of iconic, but that's only because it was the Fourth Doctor Cybermen story, and basically anything that was in the Fourth Doctor era, especially the Hinchcliffe era, automatically seems to become iconic because of how well remembered and well loved that era is. But yeah, so they're okay Cybermen designs, and the flares do always give me a good chuckle, the flares on the Cybermen. But yeah, they're not too much to say. Not a big fan, but they're not horrible either. Now we move on to the Earthshock Simon, which is the first one to try and recreate the kind of the original message of the Cybermen I was talking about earlier. And how they do this is by having a little see-through mouth bit, and then they've got a kind of, I don't know if it's spray painted or makeup or something like that on their chin and their teeth, and it looks it looks very nasty, and you can kind of see that there is a kind of botched remains of a human left inside of there. And while the scripts don't quite latch onto that, except for a couple of scenes, I still appreciate that they went for that with the design. And I also like the fact that they've went away from the kind of wetsuit, because, I don't know, I wasn't a big fan of the kind of wetsuit kind of thing, even though it did look kind of cool at first. And they actually went for I'm pretty sure it's an RAF jacket spray painted, and then with a little plastic chest unit on top. And yeah, these designs look really, really good, and I like that they include a little mouth bit. You know, just a reminder that, yeah, these are still humans in botched cybernetic remains, you know? They're not just a robot army. I appreciate that. Just everything about it looks very sleek, very stylish, and it's a classic design, and it's one you'll always remember. And it's probably my favourite one since the invasion. Well, that's only 2 months ago actually, but still, it's one of my favourite Cybermen designs. It's definitely was a step in the right direction after how generic they'd got in Revenge of the Cybermen. So the next design to talk about, I suppose, is the Silver Nemesis ones. They remain the same for once for the Colin Baker Cybermen story, and so in this one, Silver Nemesis, yes, Silver Nemesis. They basically kind of have the same ones, apart from I think they spray painted it some kind of metallic silver, so it's got this really beautiful finish, which makes it look much more metallic, it does look really, really nice. Although the thing I'm not a fan of is the fact they're wearing like cricket gloves or baseball gloves or something like that. They're wearing some kind of weird spray painted sports gloves, and yeah, it looks a bit awkward. I don't know why they chose to do that. I was fine with the little gloves they had on the Earthshock side, and yeah, they weren't perfect, but they looked less off than that. But either way, despite Silver Nemesis being a crap story, the Cybermen did look very, very nice for us. It's still not the 25th anniversary. That was definitely Remembrance of the Daleks. Just switch that around. I don't care what Canon says. I don't care what John Nathan Turner or the BBC says. Remembrance was the 25th anniversary, not Silver Nemesis. That's just a fact. Better remember that now. So the next Cybermen designs, we're kind of coming towards the end of them now, since they've stayed relatively the same throughout New Who. So the next one we're talking about is the Cybers design, and they just went full in on the I'm a generic robot at this point. They're just fucking robots, aren't they? And the script kind of supports that as well, with David Tennant using his sonic screwdriver to get the Cybermen to go away. And it's like, no, the whole point of the Cybermen has just been completely lost at this point. And yeah, I do appreciate the fact that you see conversion factories in this story, but the design and the way the Cybermen act, I don't know, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't do anything for me. I mean, the designs, they're not terrible in and of themselves, but as a Cybermen design, and they're pretty poor, and they look really clunky as well. And the way they move, like the way the original Cybermen moved, the fact that they kind of moved with a bit of humanity kind of still left in them, where it still looked like a human walk, but a bit methodical, if that makes sense. That was very creepy, whereas now they just really slowly, like, marching as it's just as fucking robots, basically. And yeah, I'm not a fan of this design at all. I think it loses the complete point of the Cybermen. I think they're bulky. I think they look silly when they walk. They're not that threatening, in my opinion. I mean, sometimes they do have their moments, especially when there's a lot of them chasing you, but it's just when you just see people able to run away from them quite easily when they're slowly plodding around, and when the Doctor uses his sonic screwdriver to make them fuck off, it's just, it loses it for me, and that reduces what kind of goodwill, the actually great writing of the first story they're in kind of built up for them. And yeah, and it's a shame that this is probably the longest lasting Cybermen design, as it's probably the worst. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say it's probably the worst Cybermen design. I don't like it one bit. The next one is in the Matt Smith era, the Nightmare in Silver ones, where they've been redesigned again, finally, after quite a long time of the same Cybers designs. And yeah, they're just Iron Man, aren't they? I mean, I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but they look like Iron Man. And the time it was released was when, like, the Iron Man films were at the height of their popularity and the Avengers kind of stuff was just starting. So I don't know whether it was an unconscious decision they made or whether there was something like, yes, let's make it look a bit like Iron Man to get attention. It was more likely just an unconscious kind of thing where they just were drawing it, not realising their mind was, drawing it from something else they had seen recently. But either way, yeah, they look like Iron Man, they fly like Iron Man, they have the chest units like Iron Man, and they still look like a group of automaton robots, and it's, yeah, again, it's still lost the complete point of the Cybermen. At the very least, these ones seem more threatening. Like, I don't feel these ones would bugger off because you waved a sonic screwdriver at them. And, they can move quite fast, and it's at least got that going for it. So, they're definitely better than the Cybers ones, they're separate from that, but they're still a bit shit, and they still are missing the original point of the Cyber designs, a lot like some of the middle classic Who ones, except for they just look so robot-y, it just feels completely gone at this point. But then, of course, in Stephen Moffat style, he'll mess up so many times, have so many bad Cyberman episodes in his era, but right at the end, right in his penultimate story of Season 10, he gets it right. Because that's the thing with Moffat, you'll get it wrong so many times, but you've got to keep watching, because you know just that one time he will get it right. And that is World Enough in Time. And I suppose these aren't necessarily new Cybermen designs, they're just an updated version of the 10th Planet ones, but hey, I'm still going to mention them. And yeah, it's probably not quite as good as the original 10th Planet designs. And the reason I say this is because they look less shambolic. And if you think that's kind of a bit, stupid, again, as I said earlier, the shambolicness actually makes them more creepy because, like, Christ, what the fuck are these people done to themselves, That's part of what made the Cybermen so effective and so scary as a villain in that story. But they're still great designs, and I think it was definitely worth doing a little update of them, even if I don't think they quite look as good, especially the hands, because they have actually put gloves on them, but like human skin colour gloves in it. It looks a bit odd. And I preferred it when it was just human hands, even though it looked a bit funky. But that was the point of the original ones. But either way, it's still a solid design. And while I'm here, I may as well mention, just as a bonus feature, the top knots, I believe that people call them. I don't know what their actual canon name is, but yeah, they're the Cybermen where they aren't quite Cybermen yet, and they're the ones who come out and pick Bill up and take her down to the place. In World Enough in Time, in episode 1. And you see them throughout okay, now these are brilliant. These are absolutely amazingly designed. It's the simplicity. The simplicity is key here. They're just wearing a patient's uniform, but a gauze mask to completely obscure themselves. And that's because and that's what made the original 10th Planet one so effective. The reason they've got that surgical mask, that gauze mask over them, is because what they've done to themselves is absolutely horrific. So that's the thing about Doctor. You can't outright show things like that because, it is a family show. But you can imply it. And if anything, that's better because less is more, subtlety is great in TV, and that's what really works. It's implied, and that's what makes it scary, especially when you've got the one who's got his little voice machine in the hospital and he's going, pain, and kill me. So it's clearly like, there is something horrible under there, but you can't show it because it's Doctor Who. But there is. And that's what makes it a really, really effective design, combined with some really clever writing, at least in the first part of that story. And yeah, they're great. And I really appreciate that they did those, as I think that actually adds to the original design, like kind of seeing the halfway house. And that was a very good move. So that's definitely the highlight of New Who Cybermen, those top knots. And well, that's it for Cybermen designs. Apparently there's going to be some new ones in the Jodie Whittaker era, although from what I've seen of all these leaked images, it looks like they're going to be more in the same vein as the Matt Smith ones. But I'm not sure. I'll have to see them in action first before I can judge. But yeah, and maybe when I do the panel discussion on whatever episode that is, I'll talk about them. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please leave your opinion on Cybermen designs in the comments below, and any ideas for more kind of insert blank here designs in Doctor Who, in case there's any more you want to hear about, any requests, anything. Be good. And I'll see you back next time in another video. Thank you for watching.